Go in there. Go in there. Because not many people have been there. It's nice to do something that other people haven't done. But you don't want to do dangerous things.
At 95 years old, Buzz Aldrin is no longer interested in repeating rehearsed stories. He has told the world about Apollo 11 for half a century, but in recent years, something about his tone has shifted. The controlled engineer is still there, but the distance in his eyes is different. And during one televised interview marking the anniversary of the moon landing, that difference finally broke through. The reporter expected the usual, a calm recollection, a proud summary, but when Aldrin was asked what the moon truly meant to him after all this time, he didn't answer, his eyes filled with tears. Then he said,
That this hasn't changed in 100,000 years. It's the same, just gray. I don't want to talk about how many different shades.
The room went silent. The control booth stopped talking. Even the reporter looked unsure whether to continue. Aldrin did not laugh. He did not explain. People who have followed Aldrin's later appearances say moments like this have been increasing. Sometimes he sounds proud. Other times his voice cracks or trembles when he describes the surface.
I saw this illumination that was moving with respect to the stars. We were smart enough to not say, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us. So technically, it becomes an unidentified flying object.
To understand the weight behind that trembling sentence, you have to return to July 1969. The Saturn V stood on pad 39A, a machine taller than the Statue of Liberty, built with a margin of error so small that a single electrical glitch could have turned the rocket into a fireball. More than 400,000 people worked on Apollo, and none of them were certain it would succeed. That morning, Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins walked to the elevator in white pressure suits and disappeared inside the spacecraft that would take them farther from Earth than any human had ever gone. When the engines ignited at 9:32 a.m., the ground shook for miles. The rocket climbed into the sky and vanished into the glare. Moments later, inside the command module, the shaking stopped and the three men were alone with the hum of life support systems and the quiet of space. For 3 days, they traveled toward the moon, watching Earth shrink to a glowing blue sphere. Everything looked stable. But something happened on that journey that Aldrin rarely discussed publicly.
To go to bed, and I'm looking out the window, and I see a light moving at a distance, some distance, against the star background. And of course, the stars are not moving, they're inertial space. Sure.
He saw something outside the spacecraft, a light, a moving illumination drifting relative to the stars. It was not a star, not a planet, not a reflection from the panels. It tracked alongside them. They knew how quickly communication could spiral if they used the wrong words. Internally, they discussed possibilities, perhaps part of the rocket, perhaps debris, but nothing matched the motion. The encounter did not stop the mission, but the memory stayed with him. After 76 hours, Apollo 11 entered lunar orbit. When the spacecraft passed behind the moon, radio contact with Earth went silent. For several minutes, 3 human beings were farther from every living soul than anyone in history. No signals, no voices, no margin for error. According to transcripts, even the conversation inside the cabin quieted. When the signal returned, Armstrong and Aldrin moved into the lunar module, Eagle, and Collins remained alone in the command module. Then came the descent. Alarms, overloaded computers, a landing site covered in rocks. Engineers in Houston scrambled to analyze the codes while Armstrong took manual control. Fuel levels dropped toward the abort threshold. With under 30 seconds left, Armstrong found a flat area and touched down. The world cheered. In the Eagle, there was only silence and 2 men staring at a surface no human had ever touched. Before stepping outside, Aldrin made a small request to Mission Control. He wanted a moment for a personal ceremony. He took out a tiny sealed communion kit from his flight bag, bread, wine, a small chalice, and completed the first religious act ever performed on another world. NASA kept it quiet at the time because of legal concerns. But for Aldrin, it was a way to center himself before the unknown. Then he stepped outside. He expected beauty. Instead, he saw a world that did not resemble any place humans had imagined. The surface looked flat and colorless. The dust clung to everything. The shadows were sharp and unnaturally dark. The sunlight was harsh and unfiltered. The sky was absolute black, even though the sun was shining directly above them. No air, no wind, no sound. A stillness so deep that even his own breathing sounded foreign inside the helmet. Armstrong joined him. The two men moved slowly, careful not to fall, testing a surface untouched for billions of years. Aldrin later described his first impression as magnificent desolation.
Right. So I figured, well, it must be something else. How about those 4 panels? Well, there's no transponders to be tracking by the Deep Space Network as we're moving away from the Earth. So they're
not poetic, not philosophical, just observation. The surface was magnificent in its scale, but it was desolate in every sense. A world without life, motion, or time. Every footprint they made would likely remain for centuries. Every step reminded him that this place had never hosted anything alive, and when he looked up, he saw Earth hanging in the sky. A fragile, glowing sphere suspended in blackness. A world that suddenly felt impossibly small. He later said it changed his sense of scale permanently. The moon was not another destination. It was a mirror showing how thin the line of human existence truly is. That moment stayed with him long after the mission returned home. When they landed back on Earth, the world celebrated the astronauts with parades stretching through New York and Chicago. Aldrin smiled for the cameras. But those who knew him said he seemed distant. The silence of the moon followed him into crowds and ceremonies. He went through interviews and receptions, but friends noticed he was quieter, often lost in thought. Some described him as carrying a weight that had nothing to do with fame. He later admitted that he struggled with the transition back to normal life. Grocery stores, traffic, casual conversations, none of it felt real after standing on a world without sound or life. He once said the hardest part of Apollo was not going to the moon, but coming home from it. For several years, he dealt with depression and disorientation. The mission had ended, but the moon had not left him. And then the world began questioning Apollo. Conspiracy theorists confronted him in public, demanding proof. They accused him of lying about the greatest achievement of his life. The confrontation that ended with Aldrin punching a man was not anger, it was exhaustion. He had spent decades trying to explain an experience most people could never imagine. Being called a fraud cut deeper than anyone realized. But here's the part most people miss. Scientific evidence that has emerged in recent years now supports something Aldrin sensed long before the data existed. The moon is not what we thought.
Curious, and that's why when somebody asked me on Apollo 11, did you see anything unusual? I got to be honest about it and either say, well, it's a...
New AI analysis of Apollo-era data uncovered abnormalities in lunar rocks. Isotope studies revealed that the moon's composition matches Earth's interior almost exactly. The moon wasn't captured from space. It was born from Earth. A collision billions of years ago likely tore part of the planet into orbit. The moon is not a stranger. It is a piece of Earth itself. Then, there were the moonquakes. Instruments left behind by Apollo detected impacts that made the moon vibrate for nearly an hour. NASA engineers described it as ringing like a bell. The internal structure behaved unlike any planetary body scientists were familiar with. It suggested complex layering or a partially hollow interior, something fundamentally different from Earth. Further studies revealed glass beads beneath the lunar soil containing water locked away for billions of years, proving the moon once had internal heat and volcanic activity. Radar scans identified buried metal structures the size of mountains beneath the far side, likely remnants of ancient impacts that shaped the moon's evolution long before life existed on Earth. Then came magnetic analysis. Lunar rocks held faint magnetic traces, evidence of a molten core that once generated a magnetic field. The moon once had a heartbeat. Piece by piece, the scientific picture shifted. The moon wasn't a dead, silent rock. It was a dynamic body with geological history, internal energy, and a formation story tied directly to Earth. Everything Aldrin had said, the uncertainty in his voice, the emotional weight, the sense that the world misunderstood the moon, suddenly sounded less like metaphor and more like foresight. In his final years, Aldrin emphasized the psychological impact of spaceflight. He pushed NASA to support astronauts not just physically, but mentally. He believed the moon should not belong to any one nation. He supported the Artemis program as a continuation of Apollo's unfinished work. And in his speeches, he described the moon as the common ground of humanity, a reminder of what cooperation can achieve.
If there was any, as some of these people allege, any conscious plot by NASA not to divulge this information?
There never has been at any time. They are always open. That's the one thing about our space program. Once we got through flying on the Atlas.
It was the truth of a man who has stood on a world most people only imagine. A world stranger, harsher, and more revealing than any photograph ever captured. Buzz Aldrin didn't cry because he was afraid. He cried because the moon changed him. And now science is catching up to what he felt all those years ago. So the real question is this. What do you think Buzz Aldrin really saw up there, on that silent, unforgiving world that still follows him after half a century? If Aldrin left us anything, it's the reminder that the story of the moon is still unfinished. New missions are coming. New evidence is emerging. And the next generation will decide what we discover next. If you want to follow every hidden chapter, every unreleased detail, every new clue that science digs out of the shadows, then don't walk away from this moment. Hit like, tap subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next step in this story. Because the moon may not be what we think, and what comes next might change everything we thought we knew.